Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering podcast. As always, I am joined by my co-host James. How's it going, dude?
Dan, yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, we have a great show for you all today. Our main topic, we're going to be talking about mono green in cube. What has been a very popular archetype that you've seen in a lot of cubes is definitely struggling nowadays. But before we get on to our main topic, we'll be going to be touching on the news. Obviously, time codes will be down below if you want to jump around. So, yeah, let's kick it off with our first section. Let's talk about the news. So, Pro Tour Barcelona is in the books. It was taken down by Jake Beardsley. James, did you get a chance to watch much of the Pro Tour at all?
I did see a bit of it, yeah. I failed to watch any of it during the actual weekend, but I have caught up a bit on the coverage since. Watched a few rounds of draft, watched a couple of rounds of top 8. I'll say the coverage was actually excellent this time from what I saw. So you didn't see the whole thing, but it kind of feels like they've really stepped it up in these the Pro Tours, which is, yeah, because Magic coverage of a sort of pre-pandemic, you'd get a lot of dead time sort of between the matches. You know, you'd be like the match would finish and they'd maybe have one other match in the feature match area, and if they'd both finished but the rounds hadn't finished, you'd kind of just be like sat around either listening to people trying to find things to talk about or like actual just dead time with like a loading screen. And they seem to be paid to will pre-record a bunch of matches from the same round. And when our live match finishes, we'll go to one of those other ones from the start. And that seemed like a really big upgrade. The limited coverage I thought was pretty good as well. Limited can be like quite a hard thing to make work on coverage, I think. I thought they did a pretty good job. The casters were all excellent. From the commentary I saw, yeah, I thought the coverage was a big success. And the event seemed cool as well. But you were actually there. How was it in the hall?
I was, yeah. So I've actually seen none of the coverage because I was at MagicCon Barcelona. I was in the room when some of them were playing. It's very tense when they're playing. It's like a kind of, you go from big open hall with a lot of people talking, a lot of people playing Magic and talking, to this kind of room at the side that has all this like, it kind of looks like the Death Star. It's kind of like all red lighting and it's all very serious. Everyone's kind of hushed. But yeah, the Pro Tour looked very impressive and was very cool. And yeah, the event itself was a ton of fun. I've got a little vlog coming out. By the time this airs, it'll be live on the YouTube channel. But it's the first big Magic event I've been to since like 2019, since like the last GP in London, I think it was. And yeah, it was just really awesome to just be around a lot of Magic players again. Just like, it's, from what I've heard about things like MagicCon, like Philadelphia, they've definitely learned a lot from it. Like everything was just in one big hall. You kind of walked in, you had like this massive weather light in front of you. You had this like Lord of the Rings themed area where you could like sit down and play Magic or kind of do or get pictures with like cosplayers and all this kind of cool stuff. Then you kind of had Artist Alley down one section. Then you had like panels. Like we watched I watched some of the spoilers for Eldraine and for the new Doctor Who set that's coming out. And then also listened to like a Maro panel. Yeah, he was just talking about 30 things about Magic. It was just really cool just to hear Mark Rosewater talk enthusiastically about Magic for an hour. That was really cool. And then, yeah, just obviously just having a ton of like, there were so many traders. There's so many nice, shiny things, James. I spent a little bit.
It's like a trial.
Yeah, I know. So woe is me. But yeah, no, I spent a little bit more than I was planning on. I did take some trades. The feature, actually, I'm just going to set up the box to show James on camera. The main trade item was we got one of these. We got ourselves a Bayou.
Ooh, very fancy. So, Daniel, finally you'll be able to build a green-black commander deck.
I know, right? Optimal, yeah. Yeah, I love Golgari. It's like,
for those who don't know, Daniel, I think at one point had simultaneously like 5 different Sultai decks in Commander.
It might have actually been more than that at one point. It was now at least one will have a very good mana base. The other thing I picked up was picked up a load of old booster packs. Going to be doing a cool Chaos draft in the end of the year, but like a proper Chaos draft. Like we've got like Onslaught, we've got Scourge, we've got Ice Age, we've got like 2 Fallen Empires in there, James. Let's go.
Oh my god. That sounds. I'm very excited for that. Actually, that sounds disgusting, but also fantastic.
No, that should be sweet. And then, yeah. Also played in the Gavin Verhey mystery event, which is like he puts these on at Magicons, where kind of you play with like some recent sets. So we did Commander Masters Lord of the Rings sealed with a load of playtest cards that he'd made himself. We'll save the playtest cards. I'll kind of go through them when we get to the last topic, which is kind of what we've been playing recently. But there are some very funny ones and some very spicy ones in there, which hopefully we'll see in real life at some point. And then the most surreal aspect of the whole weekend was we also went to the Magicon Barcelona after party, which was DJ'd by Elijah Wood.
I did hear about this, yeah. Just bravo to whoever organised that.
Yeah, phenomenal.
I'd love to have been at a meeting where I was like, what if we got Elijah Wood to DJ in the after party?
Well, my theory is that kind of like, obviously he was involved in like the marketing for the Lord of the Rings set, but then it was basically they went to like, what else do you do? And it was like, well, I DJ. It's like, perfect. We're flying you to Barcelona.
And how are Elijah Wood's DJing skills, would you say?
Good. Like the vibes were phenomenal. Like it was kind of like chill dance music with kind of like a slightly jazzy, slightly R&B style beat. So kind of like, yeah, it kind of fits it perfectly. It then hard cut into Europop DJ with like, I think the way someone we know described it was basically like it was speed running their 20s. It was like each song was 30 seconds. Like get through it as quickly as possible.
Right, yeah.
Love that techno.
Maybe that's just the approach they're taking to Europop. You just sort of hold your nose and get through it as much as possible. Yeah. Fair enough. That sounds great.
Yeah, awesome weekend. But yeah, let's actually circle back and actually touch on the Pro Tour. So Scam, or as Wizards of the Coast are calling it, Rakdos Evoke, took down the modern Pro Tour, made up, I think, the largest percentage of the field, is about 19.3%. James, you want to touch on that deck a little bit? Like obviously, this will follow on from our last conversation about how Lord of the Rings cards are affecting formats. But
yeah, for sure. So, first of all, congratulations to Jake Beardsley. Took down his first ever Pro Tour, I believe. Very, very cool. Yeah, Scam had a good weekend, I think. Rakdos Evoke. I think Wizards not wanting to associate the word scam with their very expensive card game. Fair enough. Yeah, like, I think basically of the sort of very widely played decks, it was one of the better performing ones. Only one copy in the top 8, though, from 20% of the field. I'd say not the absolute best deck to be on probably for the weekend, but obviously very well piloted. But yeah, I'd say really big weekend for Tron. Put up great results, 3 in the top 8. Christian Calcano, Simon Nielsen, and another Tron player whose name escapes me. Javier Dominguez, of course. Is it a Pro Tour top 8 if Javier Dominguez isn't there? Doesn't seem plausible. But yeah, the Tron with the One Ring, just getting that feels like a time walk off the protection ability, and then loading back up on cards seems very strong. Christian Calcano, obviously in the final, doing very well with it. I really enjoyed though the moment where Jake Beardsley thought Caesar's Calcano with a Voidwalker in play. Calcano just sort of flicks the Ulamog in his hand over to him and vaguely reveals the rest of the cards. Like, he knows what's up. But yeah, great weekend for Tron. Team of Rhinos also putting up very good numbers, 3 in the top 8 for that as well. And Amulet Titan, piloted by Dominic Harvey, the last top 8 deck.
Sorry, just to circle back on Tron, that definitely a deck that I think has gained the most from specifically the Lord of the Rings set, and definitely the One Ring, because from what I've heard, that deck was nowhere like a month ago. Like, that deck was not putting up numbers, it wasn't being played, and just the One Ring has kind of shot it to the moon, basically, and it's in the final of a Pro Tour all of a sudden.
Yeah, for sure. I think I think part of it is just the One Ring is very good in Tron, but there have also been some metagame shifts that have been quite good for Tron. I think, weirdly, the printing of Orcish Bowmasters has been very good for Tron, I think, because it's meant there are far fewer Ragavans being played.
I get you.
Tron has a real issue with turn 1 Ragavan, especially if it's on the play. So yeah, the being a lot less Ragavans, a lot less Murktide. Murktide's quite good against Tron, that combination of early pressure with Ragavan and Dragon's Rage Chandler, followed up by counter spells and Blood Moons out of the sideboard is very, very tough to Tron to beat. But hey, Murktide was gone from being what amongst the best decks very recently to being pretty much nowhere at this event. So yeah, I think it's a combination of the One Ring and just the metagame breaks being pretty kind for Tron this weekend. See, the deck's very beatable. I don't think it's like a problem. I think if you expected if you were entering the event next weekend and you were expecting a field of a very heavy Tron, I think there's ways you could go to beat that. But definitely a great deck for this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's one of the things with the Pro Tour is that you're not playing against the metagame, you're playing against a very specific metagame of players who are showing up to play at the Pro Tour. I'm assuming we're not expecting 20% of all modern events to be Rakdos Evoke going forward, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, the thing is, Modern just has this huge range of decks that are all in the, pretty good, could potentially win an event range. And people will generally own, 1 to 2 Modern decks, and they will show up at events and play those Modern decks. So they don't tend to shift that quickly. It might be the builds of those decks can definitely shift. People will, change some sideboard cards around, tweak their main decks, but you're not going to see all the Is It Murktide players switching over to Mono Green Tron for next weekend, or to Rakdos Evoke.
No, exactly. And that is something that the pros are able to do because they have, a lot of them will have the backing of teams behind them and sponsorship where they're able to kind of get hold of the best decks and this kind of stuff. Whereas, the average FNM and stuff, people have the deck that they like. Yeah, they're not going to swap over. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And most of these decks are $1,000 plus, so it's not like people are switching really quick.
Yeah, I keep forgetting how pricey Modern is, but
yes, it is a problem. Thank you for that, Modern Horizons.
So yeah, just moving on to just specifically on some cards because the 2 most played cards in at the Pro Tour were the One Ring with 450 copies, then Orcish Bowmasters is a close second with 413 copies. And then it does kind of drops down from there, especially main deck, it drops off significantly down from there. There is when this is released, this will be released on the Monday. There is a ban and restricted announcement today. Basically, if you're hearing this day of release, there is a ban and restricted announcement in a few hours. Do we expect any changes in Modern, James? Like those are a lot of numbers. They definitely have data on this now. They've seen how much cards like the One Ring and Orcish Bowmasters are being played, especially in Modern. Is it too early to make a change, or do you think they'll pull the trigger on that?
So, in normal circumstances, if we didn't have this, we're making this BNR announcement now, and then we don't have another one for ages, I'd say certainly 0 changes. Because I think generally the time you want to ban things is when the format has become a bit stagnant. People are like, oh, this deck's the best deck, or these 2 decks are the best deck. We don't have good tools to beat them. Mess game's really warped around them. That's definitely not the spot we're in, right? There's you look at this field, it's still actually very diverse. If you look immediately outside the top 8, you've got Rhinos, Merfolk at 8 and 2, Golgari, Dimir Control, Burn. There's lots of stuff doing really well.
There's an oops all spells list in here, James. Let's go.
Phenomenal. Yeah. And it is worth noting with these events that the top 8 is not, because the top 8 also takes into account people's limited records. This is not a perfect reflection of these are the 8 decks that did best. For example, I have to know the guy who went 8 and 2 with Merfolk because the Soul Pilots in the room also managed to go 0-6 in drafts. So
right, less ideal, yes.
Yes, yeah. But so sorry, after that side diverse. So I don't think, I think the metagame is still very very much in a state of flux. I think all these decks we have a lot of tools to beat. However, the structure they've given themselves is, well, we're making this BNR now, and then we have a long time until we can make another one. So I guess you could see a world where they think the One Ring is becoming a bit too prevalent and they don't want to live with this card in the format for too much longer. But I'd still be very surprised if we saw a banning, actually. I think actually probably more likely is an unbanning. There's been a lot of chat about that.
What are you thinking? Birthing Pod, James? Splinter Twin? What are you?
Oh, the Splinter Twin Brigade can come out, yeah. So I think there is a pretty valid argument that just, Modern's got a lot more powerful in the last few years. There's probably cards on the ban list that don't need to be there anymore. Things like Bridge from Below,
Now we are talking, James.
Bridge from Below was banned because the Hogak Bridge from Below deck was too good. And the Hogak deck was too good, and still, it maybe even got better when people built it without Bridge from Below. and then they banned Hogak. But Bridge from Below is still banned, and it makes no sense. Bring us back our Bridge from Below.
All right, I'm on board this train.
Yeah, and there's a few others as well. I think the more powerful ones they could look at, things like, is Green Sun Zenith still too good for Modern necessarily? Is a valid question. But if I was betting on this BNR, I'd still very much be on no changes.
No, so yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And also kind of, they never really want to ban cards that are still in the most recent product that they are selling.
Exactly.
As well. Just in a purely cynical business, hard cash point of view, people are still buying these packs. The new set isn't out yet. Now is not the time to ban. Literally, the key card from the Lord of the Rings, it's in the name. They're not going to want to try and they will do everything they can to try and keep the One Ring around a bit longer. And also, it is a pricey card. People have just bought into it. There will be a lot of feel bads if people have been opening them and this kind of stuff. But that is always the way with bans and stuff. But
yeah, 100%. No, I can't see any of the Lord of the Rings cards realistically.
No, that's fair. All right, well, so let's move on. So sticking with Magic on Barcelona and Pro Tour Barcelona, but some less fun news. So Federico Vuano, apologies if I've butchered that, but was disqualified for cheating at the Pro Tour. James, I think you know a bit more about this than I do. Do you want to touch on this a little bit? It's not super fun news, but...
Yeah, this really sucks. So we got so for context, Federico Vuano won the last regional championship in Europe was the Athens one. The winner of that, so coming in with quite a reputation, and in a match against Carl Serap, I believe it was. So Federico had attacked for his ring bearer twice, looted away a mountain twice, but upon checking, there was only one mountain in the graveyard. That mountain had therefore mysteriously made its way back to his hand. The judges weren't happy with his explanation of this, and he was DQ'd for cheating. And this really sucks because especially coming in with all that success, all of those people he lost to in very high stakes games in the regional championship and other tournaments are now thinking, "Oh, was that a fair game of Magic that I lost? Or was that the result of cheating?" And it makes, and honestly, is one of the things that can make tournament Magic a lot less fun is when you feel like you have to be policing every single aspect of what your opponents play, paying so much attention to all of their game actions, because if you don't have that level of trust, and honestly, in a really high stakes Magic tournament in paper, you probably shouldn't have the level of trust, because there are some people out there who will do this. It's a small minority, but you do have to be vigilant in paper tournaments. I think a lot of people have come from a while of all the competitive Magic being online, and they're maybe not used to this. And it's I'd say the only downside really of having these tournaments back in paper again.
No, exactly. I from a personal point of view, just just on a human point of view, you kind of hope that this is just maybe a thing of like the pressure got to them, because like there is pressure with the Pro Tour, because like if you don't get a certain amount of wins, you're not invited back to the next one. This kind of stuff. People base a lot of their livelihoods around it, so you kind of hope it was a one-time error of judgment. But yeah, never good, especially someone being like disqualified at like such a public like forum, basically. Like outside of Worlds, this is one of the biggest events that they do, and now everyone knows. So yeah, so that does suck. Couple more bits of news. It's been a busy week or so. Is this better news? I think it is. So
yeah, it's definitely not worse news, is it?
No, exactly. So Post Malone has bought the One Ring for $2 million. I think it was originally reported at $2.6 million, but that is Canadian. It was $2 million. Yeah, it's definitely newsworthy. I think my opinion of it is like, cool. Okay.
Yeah, but dude's got a lot of money. He can spend it on whatever he wants.
Yeah, I think I think an album of his just dropped recently. That shows how much I pay attention to popular music. I listen to a lot of music, but less like pop and charty stuff. But God, I sound like such a boomer when I
yeah, my God,
At least we know that he likes Magic. It's going to be something that, I mean, it'll probably appear on game nights or something like that. But like, at least it's going to someone who actively plays Magic. It's not going to a collector who's just going to hoard it. It's probably one of the best things, like outside of throwing it into a volcano, as we've discussed previously. This is one of the best things that I get, like end results that kind of could have happened, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. I think, this is definitely seems better than it going and sitting in a safety deposit box somewhere. It's a hell of a lot of money, but yeah, it's fair enough. Yeah, I'm sure we'll keep cropping up on the Magic content creator rounds whenever Post Malone appears. You can bring his Lotus and his very fancy One Ring.
And then, our last bit of news is, at Magic on Barcelona, they spoilt some of the Doctor Who Secret Lair and Commander decks. It's the next Universes Beyond. We've had Walking Dead, we've had Stranger Things, we've had Warhammer, we've had Lord of the Rings, obviously most recently. Now we have Doctor Who. James, are you a Doctor Who fan? Does this kind of tickle your fancy a little bit?
I definitely watched it a bit growing up when it first came back. The Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, that era of Doctor Who I definitely watched most of. Haven't watched it in a long time. I don't think that's just me, or just I get the impression it's quite a lot less popular than it was at that point. But I think there are definitely worse IPs they could go for. Seems like it will get a bit more traction in the Magic community than like the Fortnite one, for example.
Oh, I forgot about the Fortnite one. Yeah.
What about you? Are you a Doctor Who fan?
A little, so not massively. So again, people will be able to work out my age pretty within a fairly decent window here, because generally speaking, Doctor Who has been on TV for the past 40, 50 years, apart from a 8-year window where I was growing up and watching TV and stuff. So I don't have my Doctor. I don't I watched a bit of Christopher Eccleston, but I started that came on when I was 16, 17, and I just got my first job. So I didn't watch any of it. I watched it. I've only ever seen a couple episodes of Doctor Who, because it was it wasn't on when I was a kid. And then I started working Saturdays for 5 years, so never caught up. And then by the time I stopped working weekends, I was mid-20s. And then kind of at that point, it didn't hook me. In general, though, I think they have done a very good job with these Universes Beyond decks. Like the Warhammer one was probably my favorite product of last year. Lord of the Rings is up there with my favorite product of this year. In terms of set, I think it's fantastic. They've done such a good job nailing the flavor and making interesting cards that kind of even if I don't get as much of the nostalgia with the IP specifically compared to something like Lord of the Rings and Warhammer, I'm not super hyped about it now. But when they start spoiling stuff in more in more detail, when we start seeing some cool cards from it, then I probably will get more hyped for it, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we have had a few spoilers from it. It basically seems to be suspend matters as the theme. which is kind of cool. Like obviously leaning into that time travel theme. I guess if you go leaning into time, it was either suspend matters or loads of time walks, and they thought that wouldn't be very fun. But yeah, some of the cards look kind of cool. Yeah, I guess it is probably also worth noting that we're way more likely to be into Doctor Who than the average Magic fan because we're from the UK, and it is. I don't know how big. I think it is. It's kind of a cult thing in the US. I think, but I think it's kind of niche.
I think it. See, this is with no knowledge. Actually, no. This is with a slight bit of knowledge, but I think it's bigger than we think it is.
Okay, cool.
There will obviously be a cult following, but I think it is in the zeitgeist of people who like if you like Magic and you like Lord of the Rings and you like Warhammer, there's a high chance that you have watched or at least know about Doctor Who and have watched it. I would say.
Okay, that's interesting. In which case, it is probably a good shout for a Secret Lair, yeah.
And also, don't worry, everyone. There will probably be a set review for Cube for the Lord of the Rings. Like if the Warhammer set was anything to go by, how many impactful cards for older formats and for Cube was in that set? And that was just for Commander decks like this one. That's kind of why I'm hyped throughout it. If I'm honest with you, like a whole swathe of new, cool, interesting cards. Always love it. But we're talking about that when it comes out later this year.
Yeah, 100%. I did see one card I wanted for Commander, which was for Tribal, just to have a Dalek's Matter card.
Oh, let's go. Okay, nice.
You can tap and untap Dalek to replicate your removal spell. Looks phenomenal.
Is it Dalek a creature type? I'm trying to...
Yeah, I think you can make Dalek tokens, yeah.
Right, so for our main topic of the day, we are going to be talking about mono green in Cube. We're going to be giving you an overview of the archetype. We're going to be telling you the cards to include in your cube if it's something you want to play with yourself, how it plays and how to draft it, and also, importantly, where it is positioned in 2023, because this is one of the oldest archetypes in Cube. Like as far as I'm aware, this has been around since the early days of the vintage Cube. There's always been something big, something dumb, and something mono green about it. James, do you want to tell us what is mono green and what is it trying to do?
Yeah, for sure. So mono green obviously is in and of itself just a deck that only features green cards. But when we talk about mono green and Cube, we're really talking about a pretty linear ramp strategy in general. So this is something that's going to really prioritize starting off with cheap elves, so cheap creatures that tap for mana. Ideally, you want to play one on turn one. There are some phenomenal ones that cost 2 mana as well. For example, the Fellows, which is green for 2/1, taps for a green for each forest you control. So you play it on turn 2, and then on turn 3, if you played another forest, it can tap for 3 green mana. And what mono green is trying to do is generally looking to get up to the 7 or 8 mana mark. It's not, in its traditional form of mono green, it's generally not that interested in like 4 and 5 drops trying to win the game with them. It's really trying to get up to, for example, Avenger of Zendikar, or the real closer that mono green decks always want is Crater Hoof Behemoth, which is 8 mana. I think it's 5 green for a 5/5. When it enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +X and gain trample until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So you play that with more than sort of 3 or more creatures in play, and the game almost always ends immediately. You just turn your creatures sideways, and they're not going to have enough points of toughness to block with. And that can definitely be really powerful. Say the accelerants are really, really powerful in these in the higher powered cubes, and even going down the power level slightly, just ramping out with elves can be very good. But yeah, if we're looking at the vintage cubes and even the sort of the legacy cube, things like the Fellows that I mentioned before, Jiraga Tree Speaker, which is a 1 mana 1/2. If you pay 2 mana to level it up, it gains the ability to tap for 2 green mana. Things like it is for green solving. The dream curve, I guess, of mono green is something like draw a tree speaker, level it up on turn 2, play over Fellows on turn 2. On turn 3, you have 8 mana. This is not bad. This ends games. That is still a good strat, and it can certainly still win games. Gaia's Cradle is another land that really, really turbocharges your mana generation. And then, you do have good 5s that you can play. Things like Plow Under, which is a 5-mana sorcery that puts 2 lands on top of your opponent's deck, is a real good way to bury them after you've got off to a quick start. Things like Nissa, doubling all your forest's mana and making 3/3s is very strong. But yeah, really at some point you're looking to get up to those real expensive cards. For Craterhoof to just kill them. Terastodon, which can blow up non-creature permanents. It basically beast withins 3 things. It kills 3 things, and whoever controlled it gets a 3/3 for each thing. So sometimes you kill your own lands, send them into 3/3s. Sometimes you kill your opponent's lands, so they don't have any mana.
Specifically, you never give them 3 beasts that can block your 9/9. That is the key part with that.
That is often a mistake I've seen people make.
I have made that one. Don't worry.
Yeah. And then another card which really maximizes, and it can be a real big power level spike for this deck, is Natural Order. That's the 2 green sorcery. There's an additional cost. You sack a creature, and you can search your library for any green creature card and put it into play. So you can just get this out very reliably by turn 3 in a mono green deck, because you're basically always going to play an elf in the first 2 turns of the game. And then on turn 3, you can go and get your Terastodon and the game end. And that will win a lot of games. However, it does tend to be a pretty vulnerable game plan. When all your mana dorks die, you're looking at your 8 drops in your hand, and you can get real sad about them real quick. Yeah, and then one of the other key cards, or can be one of the other key cards, but put some different deck building pressures on you, can be Channel. This is obviously a really, really busted card. This is a green. Until the end of your turn, you can pay a life to make a colorless mana. Obviously, this isn't good at casting Craterhoof Behemoth, because it's green to cast it. And then Craterhoof Behemoth costs triple green, so you need 5 green mana total. It's kind of tough. But if you can get some of your top end to be either completely colorless is ideal, obviously, but even some of the just slightly less pip-intensive stuff, Cold One Eye or something, Channel can lead to having a really busted start. And obviously you just give yourself outs of some ridiculous, turn 2 Ulamog without any, even if they kill your elf, which is a pretty unique angle for mono green deck to play. So it's definitely worth keeping an eye out for, but just want to be aware that it doesn't go in every deck.
Yeah, Channel's a super busted card. I've been tempted to add it to mine, but is that too good for an unpowered cube? It's on the line, I think. It
is on the line. I suppose you could put it in for a cube or 2 and see how it plays, but
we won't tell anyone.
Certainly, Channel Emrakul has Fast Oracle to Mono Consultation vibes to it.
No, 100%. One of the things that we'll kind of get onto as we talk about mono green in a bit more detail is a lot of the cards that you mentioned there are a bit old. And I think maybe some of them are starting to show their age a little bit. Like I think the most recent card you mentioned there was probably Nissa, which that's got to be a little bit old. Like I love Plow Under, but Plow Under is a little bit of an old card, and maybe these are starting to see their ages. Before we go into kind of that, I think I kind of so generally speaking, this type of big mono green, you are seeing in things like the Vintage Cube, and generally unrestricted cubes that can run rares, that can run mythics, that kind of thing. You do see this a lot in Legacy Cube. There it is definitely more Planeswalker based. I think that's where kind of you see the Nissas and the Garrux, there's some of the kind of untapped lands and that kind of stuff. So you can kind of like, make a bunch more mana with your Cradle by like twiddling it, or like Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. That's another one I think you see in more kind of legacy cubes. And this will also 100% be like the Nykthos strategy is something you'll see more on like the Arena Cube as well. Like mono green is generally everywhere. Like it's one of the staple archetypes, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to talk about it. Like, yeah, even when you go down to Peasant, like people still love ramping out a Pelakka Worm. So we've gone over some key cards. Like we're not going to list off all the mana dorks. There is about 4 or 5 Llanowar Elves. You want all of those in your deck. In terms of drafting this, if you were in a draft and you were thinking mono green is either open or something you wanted to force, what are the cards you would want to see in your packs to let you know that you are good and safe to go into it?
So I think in terms of your priorities, with a few exceptions, you don't need to prioritize the expensive cards that much. You can get them, and hopefully, if you're drafting mono green, you're the only person drafting mono green, and no one else is taking them from you. So I think in general, you really want to prioritize those 1 mana elves, because your draws that don't start with a 1 mana elf are often just going to be that extra turn slower, and then it gives your opponent that one more turn they need to either take you off a lot of mana or do something really powerful and proactive of their own. And that is, I think, often more how you lose the game than you had a slightly suboptimal 7-drop. I will say I think the exception to that is Kratos Behemoth exactly. Because all the other mono green top end stuff is I put loads and loads of stuff into play and I'm going to kill you with it next turn. Whereas Kratos Behemoth just kills you with the mana dorks the turn you cast it. And that's a really big deal. It means they can't just untap and wrath you. So I'd say, yeah, your most important cards I'd put as like Kratos, Natural Order, and then the really busted mana dorks. So primarily Rafellos, but also Jiraga Treespeaker being really high on that list. And those are, in terms of very early in the draft, not knowing what else I need for my mono green deck, if I knew I was mono green, those potential and Gaia's Cradle, and those are basically the only cards I'm taking over Llanowar Elves. Because you just need that real high density of 1 mana elves. You can't, if you need to, you can put like Sylvan Caryatid and Wall of Roots and things like that in your deck, but you're pretty unhappy about it. Actually, you want to be starting that Vampire Train going on turn 1 as many games as possible. You need that redundancy. You're hoping to have like 5 1 mana elves.
Exactly, because as you said, we're not going like we're not trying to play a 3-drop on turn 2. We're trying to play an 8-drop on turn like 3 or 4. So you really need to get them down as early as possible, basically.
Yeah, 100%. And like your great draws of ones that start off like 1 mana elf into a bunch more ramp on turn 2, like
into 2 more elves on turn 2. Yeah,
2 more elves, or like you can play one of them, sort of slightly more expensive ramp spells that gets you 2 mana, or just obviously Rafellos, which is like 2 mana but taps for 3 the next turn because that card's unbelievably broken in the right deck. So you need to prioritize that bottom of your curve. You need to prioritize your Kratos and your Natural Order because those lead to you doing really, really broken stuff. And then you kind of fill out your deck with some Planeswalkers, like 5 mana Nissa is one of the better ones here, but you can play like any of the Garruks, they're kind of all fine. The 4 mana one that makes beasts and untaps lands is quite nice because it kind of does both parts of what you want. Like if you have that out very early, then it can ramp you to that 8 mana. Untapping Gaia's Cradle is particularly nice, but it can also just pump out some 3/3s and help you stabilize the board, offset some beatdown threat on its own. And then the last thing is if you have Craterhoof, then more ways to find Craterhoof are really nice. obviously, Natural Order is one that's just broken, but also things like Finale of Devastation can be quite good here. You just cut one of your other expensive cards you'd play for Finale of Devastation, and that plays like very close to a second Great Huff.
No, exactly. And yeah, I think just to add on, if you have the Cradle, then obviously things like Expedition Map and Crop Rotation, so you can go find the Cradle, can really lead to some explosive turns. Like those are some of the few cards that don't generate you mana themselves, but go and find your ways of generating a ton of mana. I find those to be quite strong. From all the cards we've mentioned, it doesn't sound like there's much like interaction. Like, you're not like, there's no like Beast Within or anything like that. Like it is kind of a very A plus B equals kill you. You're interacting with your opponent's life total by hitting them with something big. Is that kind of fair to say, James?
Yeah, pretty much. And there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, what's the good interaction you have in mono green? It's pretty limited. But even if you get something like a Dismember, honestly, it's kind of a tough sell in mono green. And the reason is that because most of your cards basically don't do anything on their own. You need to draw the ramp and the payoffs every draw. Because you're not realistically getting to your Avenger of Zendikar, your Crater Huff by just playing lands. So you need to have that redundancy of ramp, and most of your other spells are just mana. One for wanting with your opponent is actually really quite bad in mono green. You need a lot of resources to do your thing. Basically any card where you're exchanging one of your cards for one of their cards, taking resources out of the game. You'd call it it's very much, I'd say, to use sort of limited terminology, it's a big game deck. You want more resource in the game, not fewer. So you don't want to be trading resources with your opponent most of the time. You want to be building up your resources to do your overwhelmingly powerful thing that's going to win you the game. Obviously, I'm not saying you can't board in a Dismember if you think you really need it, but in general, yeah, it's not a card you're looking for. And that goes for similar cards.
What's the big persist creature? Like, if you can ramp something like that out.
Woodfall Primus.
Yeah, that's it. That's a bit of removal. You're fine running because it removes it answers something while also being a massive beater that you can win the game with. It's something like if there are answers in this deck, it's normally on the big top end. Like I know some of them were running like Dragon Lord Ataka, which when it comes into play deals 5 damage divided around things basically. Like if you're going to be answering something, it's with your big game winning threats basically.
Yeah, 100%. You can also run land destruction in this deck, just because
that's quite nice. Yeah,
because you're getting it out very early, and things like Flower Under's the best one, but also like Acidic Slime can be acceptable. Because land destruction, like a lot of decks don't want those cards because like land destruction has a very small window of opportunity to be good. Because once your opponent's got their big threats down, then blowing up their lands kind of does next to nothing. But Plow Under, if you're reliably casting on turn 3, can be very good. It just buries your opponent.
I think, Plow Under is actually one of the... It's a card that specifically only mono green wants. So I'll just read Plow Under now. So it's 3 green for a sorcery. Put 2 target lands on top of their opponent's library. So what you said, James, about playing it on turn 3, what you're realistically doing with this is like it's semi-land destruction. For me, it's more of just like a massive tempo play. Like you're doing this on turn 3 and you're like basically your opponent is only drawing lands for the next 2 turns. They're back on resources. So in theory, you can then, like if you played this 5-drop on turn 3, on the next turn, on your turn 4, they're going to have 2 lands in play at best, like 2-3 lands in play. You can then ramp out your big things while your opponent's like just been tempoed out of the game.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, it sounds like hyperbole, but there are a lot of games where it feels like you time walked twice with Plow Under. If you're on the play, you Plow Under on turn 3, you put their only 2 lands back on top of their library. They're going to spend the next 2 turns just replaying those lands. And it's very hard for them to come back from that.
So we've drafted our deck. We have our mana dorks. We have hopefully either like a Gaia's Cradle or a Natural Order to let us do something a bit broken. And we have some big dumb things kind of ramp into or cheat into play. And How do you view the makeup, James? So let's start, I think, with the lands, because I personally love running 16 and less lands in Cube. I'm assuming this is a deck with all the mana dorks that lets you run like where are we going? Are we going 15? Are we going 14 in like a mono green deck, or are we being sensible and sticking around the 16, 17 mark?
I don't like to go below 15. I definitely see a lot of people doing it. And I understand why, because you look at your cards and you're like, oh, all these cards make mana. I don't need any mana dorks. But the thing is, if you're playing an elf but then missing your land drop, you're not actually ramping. That's just equivalent to like you played your land, but it can die to a shock. You need to be ramping and hitting your lands, and you're just gonna try to play your massive thing really quickly and hope it's good enough, honestly, because if you get too aggro with cutting lands, then firstly, you're not ramping as quickly because you're missing land drops and paying your dogs. You're not really achieving that much. But also, if someone kills your mana dork and you're not drawing into those land drops, you just have no way to get back into the game. I'm not saying play 17 if you have like 5 1-drop dorks and a bunch of 2s, because obviously you will flood. But I don't like going down to the like 14s and 13s, which I definitely see people doing. Also worth noting, in some ways, Gaia's Cradle doesn't count because it doesn't tap for your elf on turn 1. It also doesn't help you, like if they Wrath, doesn't help you build back. You kind of maybe want to count Gaia's Cradle as half a land, and see the other half of it as like a really good ramp thing, because it's because you can't keep your like one land hand if it's a Cradle, right? And you can't keep your like Forest Cradle the Fellows hand, because it just doesn't tap for mana if there's no creature.
No, that makes sense. And then in terms of like we've already mentioned, kind of like you don't, apart from Kratos, if you don't necessarily need to like aggressively draft the big things, because there's plenty of big things like you can take the big green creatures and also the big artifact creatures. But kind of like, how many do you think you need as a top?
So a lot of it depends on how many ways do I have to find them. I kind of view like, so for example, Finale, I kind of just count as a big thing.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. It's something you're dumping all your mana into, and it will do the job basically. Because Finale goes and finds you the big creature. Yeah,
exactly. And the same with Green Sun Zenith, and that's why probably a card that Paul mentioning earlier. Actually, why Zenith is very powerful. This is the green and an X sorcery. Search for a green creature card with CMC X or less. Put it into play. Very powerful because it's a 2-mana accelerant, right? On turn 2, you can go and get your 1-drop elf with it. Obviously, it's a bit less efficient when you're playing the elf, but it's important as an option. But it's also like you can spend 9 mana and put Kratos Behemoth into play, or 8 mana and put Avenger of Zendikar into play, and that's very important. And that is one of the few tools you have to reduce variance. So yeah, basically it depends how many ways I have to find them. I would be aiming for about 5 big things or ways to find big things. And obviously, and you probably don't want to be all in as 1 Kratos Behemoth and 4 ways to find it, because if they exile it or something, somehow you're in a lot of trouble. And yeah, you don't want too many because you don't want to draw a bunch of them, but you also you don't want to just have one get fort seized and then be doing nothing for the rest of the game. So it is kind of a fine balancing act. I tend to kind of err on the side of I want like 5 so that I reliably see 2.
That does make a lot of sense. Yeah,
because I don't want to be dead because my opponent dealt with one of them. And then in terms of the rest of makeup, the lands basically as many 1-mana dorks as I can get. I don't think I would ever, even the not great ones, I very rarely cut. then you kind of fill it out with what's in between. These are the planeswalkers and the.
How do you feel on like utility creatures, like things like a scavenging ooze, something like that?
Scavenging ooze is like playable for sure. I feel like the really good mono green decks, you leave it in the sideboard. Honestly,
no, it makes sense.
You board it in when it's good, but it's it's not enough on its own, right? And it doesn't really progress you towards your core game, towards your game plan.
No, exactly. I think it's kind of this is leading us on to nicely kind of like what is mono green's good and bad matchups. So you've drafted mono green, you've kind of taken the key guys that we're after. You have a good healthy breakdown of mana dorks. You have hopefully a natural order or a cradle to allow you to do something big and dumb and get out your big thing. So you're sitting down and playing against your opponents. Kind of, what are you hoping to play against, James, if you're mono green? Like, let's start with the plus. Like, what are you hoping to play against?
So I think probably the deck you're most happy to play against, and is one of the best decks in lots and lots of cubes, which is very nice for you, is White Weenie. Because you just go so much bigger than them so quickly, and they're not meaningfully interacting with your stuff. They might have 1 to 2 removal spells that are cheap enough to like answer your mana dorks. Because a lot of your threats do a lot of ETB stuff. You don't care that much if they swords it. But you care if they swords your land royals or your fellows for sure, but they only have so many. It's not like a red deck where they can have a whole bunch of burn spells for them. And then their payoffs, they're going to play an Adeline or something, and you're going to laugh at it and play your 6-drop. It really just doesn't matter to you. It's exactly the sort of magic mono green wants to play. They're going to play a 2-drop into a 3-drop into a 4-drop that can all attack pretty well in most matchups, but you're just going to play a 7-drop that invalidates all of them on its own. And they don't really have great ways to answer that. And a lot of their ways they slow down other decks are mana denial, stuff like Thalia and Brainwing Mare, this sort of stuff. And you really don't care about any of them. Partly because a lot of it attacks as non-creatures and you're playing a lot of big creatures, but also just even if you're talking about something like an Ugin, say, or Karn, the 7-drop Karn, making your 7-drop cost 8 mana is actually doesn't matter that much because your deck's very capable of getting to 10. It's not nearly as big of a deal as making the blue players ponder cost 2 mana. So I think that I would say is probably your best matchup, and that's really good for mono green because mono white is also an incredibly popular deck in lots and lots of cubes, and tends to be one of the better decks actually. The matchups that can go either way. The sort of mid-rangey decks are
I could see that because you're still going bigger than them basically.
You're still going a lot bigger than them, but they have interaction. And it really depends a lot what sort of interaction they have. And just if they're able to line it up well in the game. But if they know if your opponent has lots and lots of ways to kill your mana dorks, that can be a really big problem for you. But if they're just trying to value you out for 3 to 5 mana threats, you're very much okay with that. You're going to go really big and laugh at their planeswalker because it just doesn't matter. But if they're the sort of mid-range deck which has a whole bunch of cheap burn for your 1 and 2 drops and maybe some hand disruption, maybe some counter spells, then you can get in trouble because your draws are not going to be that redundant. If they deal with your first 2 threats, often just going to fall over and die, and if they kill all your dogs, you're also going to fall over and die. And then they're random, I don't know, Fable of Mirrormaker or whatever they happen to have, will just do enough to win them the game.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And then in terms of bad matchups, I'm assuming it's burn or like a deck running a lot of burn, like a red X deck that can answer all your little dorks. And I'm kind of assuming mono green doesn't do well against control.
Yeah, so control specifically, if it has the sort of unconditional counter spells, like is very, very tough. It's just going to be hard for you to line up your threats, and they're generally going to be able to counter a couple of them. Maybe they wrath your board away. Very hard to come back from that. And very quick combo, also very tough for you. Anyone who's going quicker than you just have no tools. Things like Reanimator, very, very tricky. A good Storm deck that is reliably that turn quicker than you, very tough. You have some tools against them. You have things like Endurance is not a card you want to main deck, but should be taken really pretty highly for that Reanimator matchup. But the problem with mono green, a lot of the problem you run into is because you don't have any form of card selection, you really just play the cards you draw. Like, even if you have that one Endurance somewhere in your 40, it's not like you can dig for it really in any meaningful way.
And you're not really going to want a natural order for it, are you?
Exactly. Yeah. That's a tough way to do it. And then, Hand Disruption again can be very strong because mono green is just that sort of deck where you live or die by the top of your library. It's an inherently high variance strategy. You have very limited ways to overcome that. And that means if you get a hand that has like dorks and some payoff, like, you just have to keep it. You can't be like, oh, I need to find my Endurance. Like, that's just not up. And then you just kind of live or die by what comes off the top of your deck. You keep your 2-lander with a dork, they kill the dork. Sometimes you just like sit there drawing 5 to 8 mana cards, and there's not that much you can do about that. You really don't have that much agency sometimes. Those quick combo decks can be very tough because also if you think about like a Reanimator deck, right? They're doing their fast combo thing, but will also be able to interact with you. Your Reanimator deck will play some removal spells. They'll play some way to kill your dogs. They'll play some Force Users. They might be blue for some counter spells. They have all of their cards that aren't combo cards are interacting with you. Whereas you are just doing your thing and hoping it is good enough. You have very limited meaningful ways to interact back.
Cool. So that's an overview of mono green, kind of what it is, what it does, what its matchups are. One of the reasons we, I think, wanted to talk about this today is because this is such a popular archetype that is definitely not as strong as it used to be. So we've kind of, I guess, built it up a little bit. Now we're going to kind of tear it down and see what we're left with, because mono green definitely has some issues. I think kind of the most broken thing mono green can do is kind of like dork, cradle, dork, natural order on turn 3 or 4 into a Crater Hoof and then swing through and win. But the issue with that play pattern, and with a lot of the play pattern in general, is that you need to hit a certain sequence of your cards in order to like kind of really optimize the deck. Like you really need to go dork, big thing. Like if you draw those cards out of sequence, or if you have to mulligan, that kind of thing, it can really set you back. Like, and there's other ways where things can go wrong. Like you can have your hoof stuck in your hand, so you can't natural order for it. Like the other issue with natural ordering is that you have to sack a creature, so you're down a creature. If you're going to get hoof to swing through and win, you have to have enough creatures untapped to do it, which means you technically need more mana than the 4 that you're generating from natural order to go get it and put it into play. Another thing, James, if you want to take this, like it's very interactable. Basically, there's a lot of ways of stopping mono green.
Yeah, for sure. It's so obviously it's one of those decks where whatever interaction your opponent has put in their deck, it will be good against you.
That's not a good feeling. Everything, every bit of interaction.
Removal, great, kills the dorks, kills some of the big stuff. Counter spells, phenomenal, counter your 1 payoff. Hand Disruption, if I have it on turn 1, can be really backbreaking. Like they take your cheap dork, but you're in a lot of trouble. And if your hand lines up differently, you can take the payoff. It's kind of like, yeah, whatever they draw, it's probably going to work out and be pretty effective. Having said that, it's dealing with the big things is like you often only need one of them, so it often feels like you have outs at least. Your draw steps are very live, but also, you're often hoping for like two or three cards off the top of your deck, and you just keep drawing the land war elves and the lands, and they don't do anything.
I've been there, yes.
Ultimately, that's a lot of what is left in your deck at that point. And that would be fine. A lot of the other proactive decks, like all this removals, all this stuff's good against them as well, right? You play your, your like artifact combo deck, whatever. Yeah, sure, like the removal's good. You kill the welder. Your hand disruption's great. You're a combo deck, so it's cancel. The difference is those decks get to interact back. They're not all just ramp and payoff and nothing else. And some of their cards you can just cast them on their own and they're fine. Whereas mono green really doesn't get to. You have upsides from this. You're quicker than those decks. You're often doing something more powerful, but you're very one-dimensional, and you don't really get to govern your draws. So you kind of just keep your opening hand. You're like, well, there's loads of things this hand can't beat, but yep, keep. Here's my elf. Let's see what happens. Let's hope it's good enough. You're not really going back and forth. There are sort of ways you can bail out of this a little bit, where you try and get more of the really pushed sort of 4 and 5 mana cards in your deck, which you can actually just cast and do stuff. So, for example, you can try and splash something like Minsk and Boo as phenomenally powerful. And, they kill your first 2 dorks, you can just cast Minsk and do it on turn 4, and they'll die a lot of the time. Same to a lesser extent with certain things like Questing Beast, Nissa Who Shakes the World can do a little bit of this stuff. But it is a bit like, at this point, should we just be leaning into that more and not be playing all these 8 drops, because splashing is really painful. Your cards are very, very pip intensive. If you're mono green and you pick up something like a Minsk and Boo or an Oko or something where you're like, yeah, I really, really want to splash this, you need to take fixing very, very highly. The best form of that is often like Birds of Paradise type stuff, the dorks for tap for any color, but also obviously the dual lands. You often care about forest type, so you want to be a little bit cautious of the untapped jewels, and you really don't want to put tap lands in your green ramp packs.
No, that's dreadful.
Yeah, exactly. So you do need to be like, okay, got a Minsk and Boo taking Tiger over the world a little bit.
No, and that's kind of, at that point you are kind of almost changing into a different deck, because one of the strengths with mono white, mono red, and mono green, like any monocolored strategy, is that you don't have to use your picks on fixing. You can just take the best card for your deck, and then as soon as you start splashing, you have to then reliably able to cast it. So it means it's going to affect. You're not like, maybe if you take a Minsk and Boo early, are you going to take the 3rd copy of Llanowar Elves, which you probably need for your deck, or are you going to take the fetch land to go and get the land to help you splash it? Like at what point do you move into a different deck entirely, and you're not really the big ramp value deck? When are you just playing good stuff? And that kind of that kind of does lead onto a little point. It kind of just in general, like when we're talking about a lot of the cards that we were going over, a lot of them are a lot of these kind of big 7-8 mana spells are quite old, and they're really starting to show their age. Like apart from Atraxa, which is a very good natural order target, Wifey smushed me with that. Most of the cards that we've seen printed that are they're just being run in green decks in general, like not just Cube, but kind of in green decks in general, like they are like, it is like Minsk and Boo or Oko, as we kind of mentioned, or like Uro, or just like they are other colors, but also they're like 3 or 4 mana. Like even if you just go to like mono green cards, like Questing Beast or like Under Mountain Adventure, these are just good 4-drops. Like as we mentioned, kind of like playing these on like turn 3, it's definitely more consistent than lining up your sequence of mana dorks and hoping to rip the big thing.
Yeah, 100% agree. And it's at that point it does become of a thing. Well, okay, do we need to be mono green anymore? Like, can we be? Can we then start looking at blue green? Can we then start looking at even like Gruul? You know, you get some interaction, you get some more threats. You start getting things that shore up the weaknesses of those green cards. And that is the tension with these, what I'd call sort of the core cards of mono green strategy. You know, the Rapheloses, the Jiraga Tree Speakers, this stuff is
it's the 2 mana. So the 2 mana big dorks, like not so much the Llanowar Elves or the Birds of Paradises, because those kind of go in like any green X deck. It's as you're mentioning, it is the Raphelos, the Jiraga Tree Speakers, like the Plow Unders. Like, does any other deck apart from mono green want a Plow Under?
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think that touched on another very important point of what to be thinking about when you're drafting this deck. If you're in this deck and you're like, yes, I'm traditional mono G and I'm trying to cast 8-drops, firstly, you better have a good reason to think no one else is doing this, because you should not be fighting for this. But once you're in like pack 2 and you're like, okay, I think I'm like the only heavy base green drafter, that lets you draft very differently, because now you know there are a bunch of cards which you just know are going to wheel. It's, you can even do things like you open Raphelos in pack 3, and Raphelos is maybe the best card that you could possibly open in the whole cube. And you will, instead of taking that, you will take a Tiger to splash Windscrew, or you might take a Birds of Paradise, because someone else might be able to use Birds of Paradise and they might take it off you. Whereas if you're that confident you're the only base green drafter, no one else is taking Raphelos from you. So these are the sorts of things you need to be thinking about, but you also need to be thinking, when you're taking these green cards early, okay, if it's not there, how do I pivot off of it? And that's where you can get into those like green multicolor decks, which lean into other colors for more interaction, more good threats, and aren't so much looking to play 8 mana cards.
I think, touching on the draft, then, one thing that has definitely been more of a thing in just cube construction in general. So this kind of dates back to like the first Dominaria set in 2018. That was kind of like the one that where Richard Garfield came back and kind of like, no, this is what we're doing, and kind of every set has followed it since then, where basically you have a lot of signpost uncommons in the draft set, like in like standard legal sets, which kind of guide drafters to what they're doing. That's become the norm in draft sets, and is definitely something that's kind of become more of a norm in like cube construction. It's definitely something that when I was building my cube, when I started, I was like, okay, what do all of my guilds do? Monocolored decks fit into that archetype slightly. It's harder to fit them in, basically, because like mono red and mono white, they're aggressive, they're easy to support. They can be aggressive in monocolor combinations or in multiple colors, or in like 2-color combinations. They kind of, that will still work as a functional deck. With green, it has generally become one of the better support colors for other decks, because we talked about broken cards like Oko and Uro and Minsk and Boo, and like those are green X cards. You're having like, with these other powerful cards that are incentivizing you to play other colors. Like in Mono Green's heyday, it was definitely a thing of there would be one green player at the table who was getting hooked up with all the cards, and then you had your other decks around that. Correct me if I'm wrong, James, but kind of like in the Vintage Cube, it's very rare that you have multiple green drafters. Or back in the day when Mono Green was more powerful, it was rarer that you had multiple green drafters.
Yeah, often when green was just about, look at my Kratos Behemoth, it tended to be like one person would end up in mono green, or 2 people would end up with really bad mono green decks. Whereas now you often see like 2 to 4 people, say, in green decks, but green X, like 2 to 4 color green decks.
I would say in the cubes that we do with my cube, where we get kind of 8 people drafting, I would say probably half, like 2/3 to half of the table is in green in some way. It's basically green has been a fantastic support color for a lot of different decks. Like it's not just mono green anymore. Like, yeah, you can have like persist combos in like Abzani colors. You can have like a lands deck in like Teema. You can have like 4 or 5 color decks, like things that people trying to play like Omnath or like Golos. They're a 5 color deck, but they're going to be primarily based in green. And it just means that more players are taking the cards from you. So, like, yes, you might be able to get the Cradle, the Natural Order, and the Hoof, but you don't have the other 75% of your deck as available to you as you would have previously.
Yeah, 100%. There's it's just the total bracket of powerful green stuff. The stuff that supports mono green has basically not been added to in like I don't know, like meaningfully. It feels like in the last 10 years, like sure, like Nissa Who Shakes the World's a good card, but it's not like they've not been printing more Rafeluses and Geometry Speakers and Kratos Behemoths, right?
No, exactly. I think we were a bit excited about Nissa Ascended Animist. That's the 3 green for Phyrexian mana, like one with completed. So you can either play it as a 5 mana, 3 loyalty planeswalker that upticks and makes you a beast, or a 7 mana, 7 loyalty planeswalker. So kind of I think we were excited with that at the time because I was like, ooh, this is actually a new card for mono green because it's one that you can play earlier when you need to stabilize, or you can play later when you want to win the game. It kind of has that modality. But apart from that, I genuinely can't think of a card they printed that is specifically for mono green in a long time. And I think it's also showing in things like Constructed as well. So kind of like a lot of cube archetypes will come from constructed formats. Kind of like a lot of like ideas come from what people are brewing. Like you might see something like something might appear in like Legacy or Vintage or Modern or Pioneer, and kind of like you then want to reflect that in your cube. Kind of like there hasn't been many mono green decks in like a wide variety of formats recently. At least ones that translate into cube well. Like yes, Elves has always been a thing in Legacy, but that deck is quite hard to translate into cube because effectively you're just rebuilding mono green as we've had it before, but with more Elves. There's going to be like we did see the mono green in quotation marks make a splash in Pioneer. Could that? Is there anything there, James? Like, is there any? Like, is there anything Cube can learn from something like Pioneer, like the Nykthos style strategies and going multiple colors?
So, I mean, the multiple color thing in that deck was really based off Oath of Nissa, and you don't get to put 4 copies of Oath of Nissa in your green deck, but in Cube. But I mean, we can certainly learn the lesson that hey, this Nykthos card is really busted.
Yeah,
but Nykthos does need like pretty meaningful support. Like, there's a reason you're playing like 4 Old Growth Troll and 4 Cavalier Forms in that deck.
Right. Yes.
And
you are pip dense to make that work.
Yes, exactly. And I think Old Growth Troll is a powerful card. There's nothing wrong with it. You certainly could put it in a cube, and I'm sure some people would put it in their mono green decks. But it's not a card that actually leans into this. Inherently leans into getting to loads of mana, because it only does that when you have the Nykthos, and that's kind of off the one of the fundamental. That's the fundamental difference, right, between Constructed and Cube, is that in Constructed you can build your deck in a way where you assume you always have access to particular cards, and it's very hard to do that in Cube unless you're playing like a whole bunch of tutors. So I think to say, oh, I'm going to be a Nykthos deck, you'd need to be like a bunch of crop rotations and expedition maps and whatnot. And at that point, you
should be doing other things with it. Yeah,
exactly. And I think in a lot of ways, and obviously very, very different cards, but I think in a lot of ways, Nykthos is like a worse way to do the Gaia's Cradle thing, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah. it is less. It requires more hoops to make it good, basically.
Yeah. Like if you're going off elves, like Gaia's Cradle is better than a forest when you have 2 elves in play. Nykthos would be better than a forest when you had 4. No, when you had 5.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. No, that's a point. Yeah. No, that's fair. I think just some other things I want to touch on is like so when we last did a review of the Mega Vintage Cube, they had tried to make some adjustments to mono green to kind of give it a little like. They still obviously wanted it to be a thing because obviously it's nostalgic. It's what people think about, or it's one of the archetypes people think about when they think about the Vintage Cube is mono green. The way they changed it seemed to be they just added a bunch more tutors, give you that density of things to ramp into. Like you played a bunch of the Vintage Cube, James. Like, did you see that make much of a difference? Did mono green pick up at all?
I didn't think so. I thought if anything, it was a little bit worse. I think the thing is, so obviously, you don't get to say, oh, look, here's a demonic tutor for mono green. That card doesn't exist. So it's stuff like Worldly Tutor, where you're down a card or expensive stuff. And it's the thing is, it's never, ever a good deal to use that stuff just to go and get your elf, right? So the only thing you're using it for is to go and get your expensive card. And like at that point, is it better to put Worldly Tutor in your deck? For Worldly Tutor is green for an instant, put a creature on top from your library on top of your deck. Is it better to put Worldly Tutor in your deck, or is it better to just put another big creature in your deck where you don't have to go down a card to draw it? Because if you're in that spot where like they've dealt with your threat, but you still have loads of mana and you're just looking for a threat off the top, you'd much rather draw a creature that you can just cast than a Worldly Tutor that's going to get your creature to cast next turn because they also get to do stuff in the intervening turn. I was not impressed by mono green last cube season. I think it's in a tough spot in that cube, particularly at the moment.
No, definitely, yeah. I think it's something that it's not just we're thinking about. I think a lot of people are thinking about how they can look at like how they can fix mono green to see if there's any ways to kind of like make it what it was. Just off the top of your head, like, are there any? What do you think mono green actually needs for it to be viable again, or for it to kind of bring it back to like a like a decent power level where it can compete with 2023 cards and 2020 cards? Like, do we need like a second copy of like Natural Order? Do you need another like? I'm about to list off a load of cards that they're probably not going to do versions of, but like, is it like another Raphelos? Is it another Gaia's Cradle? Is it another Natural Order? Like something like that. Like, is it density or is it something different?
So I think the thing that got mono green become a lot worse, right, is just the cards, the other cards in the cubes, right? It's the cards around it. And I think just the pace of cube has fundamentally changed a lot, and you're no longer the quickest thing. And then the fact that you're inherently high variance and you can't interact then starts really biting, right? So, and it's kind of hard to like speed it up much with cards they're realistically going to print, They're not going to print like, I don't know, a Mox that only works for green creatures or something. This is
exactly.
This is not a reasonable card from front of you. So I think it probably ends up having to be like green as a color getting more tools to like meaningfully interact with people or to kind of mitigate some of the variance of the mono green deck. Like kind of like a better version of like an Oath of Nissa sort of thing. I think like Abundant Harvest is actually kind of nice.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So maybe like the give us an actual green ponder then. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. But honestly, even then, like I'm kind of struggling because it's like.
But then like other deck, like the 3-4 color deck is just going to run that. They're going to run that as well.
Yeah.
But like it's kind of, it's this weird niche of kind of like you need a card that specifically cares about green things.
Yeah.
Like like for it to be in a mono green deck, it's specific. Like for it to specifically be a mono green card that exists in like the average cube that is doing the guild things, but also supporting mono green. Yeah, a card for a card to be printed that cares about it, it needs to only be wanted specifically by the mono green player, not by the other players splashing green, and be good enough. And that is a very thin, like Modern Horizons exists. They could print something like there could be a Time Lord that cares about forests or something like that, But like it's not impossible, but it is unlikely.
Yeah, so I think because the reason mono green used to be really good, right, was that the things you could do on turn 4 were fundamentally just way more powerful than the things other people were doing on turn 4. And now other people are playing, like Fable of Mirvaker and Palace Jailer, and they have like Fury and Solitude and all these really effective, very cheap ways to interact. It's a lot harder to do that now.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the ways that green has to go now is either playing this more like multicolor, like more interactive game, which is definitely a good thing to be doing. Or you can try and just move your clock up a little bit more, and instead of trying to cast 8 drops, just try and cast like the really good 4 drops really quickly, You become a lot more about like your questing beasts, your Minsk and Booze. I think you're probably not straight mono green here very often, but you get rid of the 8 drops. You're more about the 3 to 5 drops. Like Elf into Lalia, really, really good. And then you,
I love that deck personally, like the Gruul Monsters deck. That is so much fun.
Yeah. I think it's really powerful, and then you also have the upside of like when they kill your elf, like you can just cast your Lalia on turn 3, and it's a really good card. Like it doesn't matter. Like one card I've actually been low-key really impressed by is Orcish Lumberjack. Bit of a blast from the past, but I think it's good now.
Yeah.
Like,
is Orcish Lumberjack back? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So Orcish Lumberjack is red for a 1/1, I assume orc. You can you'd really hope so. You can tap it, sacrifice a forest to add 3 mana in any combination of red or green. Like you play this on turn 1, you have 5 mana on turn 2. You can just do something so degenerate on turn 2 that it kind of doesn't matter. It's going to snowball you. It doesn't matter if you're down a forest. You'll probably only use it once in a game. That's completely fine. Yeah, I think that's the other way green can go, is just try and accelerate out cheaper things so that you can cast them if they kill your dogs, and they're still great if you can pay them on turn 2, and that can be good enough, and you're like kind of mitigating a lot of the weaknesses of green, of the straight mono green deck, but you're still getting to utilize the acceleration, which is what green does best.
No, exactly, and that's also kind of where they're actually printing new cards for. Because we obviously, Questing Beast is probably longer ago than I would like to admit, but Undermountain Adventure at 4. Like I personally quite like the Nuthron at 5, but you also have just like Verdurous Geolg is 8 power with trample onto on a 5 drop. That's fine. And then I think it these decks could still go up to 6. I would be perfectly fine. Keep the natural order, but natural order for old One Eye. That's a big Tyrann. It's like a 6 mana 6/6 with trample with other creatures you control have trample, and then when it enters the battlefield, you also create a 5/5 Tyrann creature token, and also it comes back from the graveyard. It does so much. It is a game-winning threat. That is more power and toughness than like a Titan of Industry or a Woodfall Primus. It's more power and toughness, and it comes back, and you could realistically hardcast it. Yeah, lower your curve and play things that you can hardcast, or aim to ramp them out. But if it goes badly, you can still just hardcast your big things and hit someone in the face with it.
Yeah, 100%. You're very capable of having 6 lands in play at some point of the game. Your card is not dead because they killed all your elves. One of the big shifts with going into these other sorts of green decks is because you're often 2+ colors, you really start valuing the dorks that tap for more than one color, like a lot higher than your land war elves. And that does mean you have to fight for them a bit more. But the hierarchs are obviously phenomenal here because they also play into your beatdown plan with the Exalted ability. But stuff like Delighted Halfling is really perfect for this sort of deck. And then just the fact that you're, maybe you're like Gruul based or you're green based, like you also get like just cheap interactive cards like all the other decks get, and you can actually, you don't just roll over and die because your opponent played a spell that lined up against yours. You have outs to deal with things, and that is not to be underestimated. And it's something that if you're stick to straight mono green, you certainly don't get.
No, exactly. So I think what we're kind of almost settling on is that it's not just it isn't just a power level thing with mono green. It's also just like where Magic is in 2023. It's like an environment thing. Like it's in general, like the only monocolored decks that are still seeing playing cube is mono white and mono red because they're quite easy. They're aggressive. Like mono blue isn't really a thing. Mono black isn't a thing. Like maybe just mono green as we knew it and as we loved it is a thing that it needs to be in a cube that is designed to work around monocolored archetypes. And with the way cube design and Magic design is going in general, people are playing more colors. Like triomes exist. Like basically the door's been kicked open. Everyone can splash as much as they want nowadays. That's not good for a monocolored deck. Like, and because the rewards are not really there, because the rewards for being mono green are quite old, it means that it's not as strong, and it probably needs to exist in a cube environment that is supporting monocolored in all 5 colors, basically.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with that. I think it's. I mean, we were saying earlier, they probably haven't printed a like properly premium like this is a defining card for mono green in like 10 years. That's going to be a tough spot for any archetype because that's every other archetype's got some really, really premium upgrades, and feels like mono green just hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, mono red has had like things like Ragavan, like all this kind of stuff. Like mono white has had plenty of stuff. Like it's just getting more and more like Mother of Runes effects all the time, this kind of stuff. But like, yeah, mono green just isn't getting the love that the other colors that the other mono colors have had in order to keep up with other decks that exist.
Yeah. And I think this is partly just a thing of the direction that Wizards design has gone right, is that they don't really want super explosive mana ramp to be like dominant. And that's kind of what this deck does.
And yeah, just on the ramp is like, one of the best things about this deck is that it can ramp into Oblivion in theory. But especially in Powered Cube, where this is still seeing a lot of play, like other archetypes can still ramp with like Moxen, and the ramp is there in the Vintage Cube for other decks.
It's certainly true that I think mono green's always been a bit weaker in Powered Cube than Unpowered Cube. For example, if you stick with the Mitgo frame of reference, it was always better in Mitgo Legacy Cube than Mitgo Vintage Cube, because in Legacy Cube, green was unique in its ability to accelerate very quickly, whereas in Powered Cube, that just isn't the case, right? Other people can have those broken ramp starts. Obviously, green gets to play more ramp than everyone else, but it comes with a bunch of downsides, as we said. And just very fast combo has always been a rough matchup for mono green. Things like a very good Storm deck are just always going to be a real issue. And in Legacy, in like the slightly lower powered cube, certainly used to be true that basically no one was really doing their degenerate thing that won the game quicker than you were. They had to slow you down. It's a little bit less true now, maybe, but yeah, I think it certainly maybe needs a slightly lower power level of cube. For example, in your cube, right? Like, imagine you're playing mono green and your opponent has like Thassa's Oracle Console in their deck. You just
we are taking out demonic consultation.
Yeah.
We are doing that.
You know what I mean? Like you can't interact
exactly,
with it, and you can't. You can never go quicker than it if they draw it. So like, it's a bit tough.
No, exactly. I think one thing I did want to touch on as well, just one issue, it's that it is actually quite an expensive archetype to support. It means that it's less viable in Budget Cube because obviously things like Gaia's Cradle is obscenely expensive because it's not just played in Cube, it is played as in Legacy. It's a very desirable card in Commander. People want it. Like Hoof is not cheap. Finale is actually, I think, more expensive than Natural Order at the moment because I think Natural Order is probably banned in a lot of places apart from like Commander. But but then even like the good mana dorks, like your Delighted Halfling, is Noble Hierarch still pricey? Like, yeah, it's a tenner. It means that kind of like it struggles to work even at like a budget setting as well. It really struggles to find a place. But like to just touch on what you said about like the Legacy Cube setting, like is that where you think you could see it?
Yeah, I think it probably has a place in a cube where you have a lot of strong cards, but you think it can cope with putting in Raphaelos and Tree Speaker and Hoof, but you don't have like other like really fast combo decks that can go under it, and then it's going to be in a spot where it will probably lose to the people who can interact with it really well, but it will beat up on the aggro decks who are just going to be slower, and then maybe it becomes like it's a kind of fine. It won't be the strongest deck in the cube, but it will be like a fine deck to be drafted.
Right, so I think that's going to bring an end to our topic on Mono Green. Some good chat there. Let's move on to our final topic. What have we been playing recently? So, James, what have you been up to? How's life in the world of Magic recently for you been?
Yeah, it's been good. I've played a modern super qualifier, I think it's called, on Magic Online last weekend. One of the things that qualifies you for mocks. To absolutely no success. I went through a bit of a process finding a deck for it. I wanted to play. I got really hyped when I saw the deck that like LSV and his team had submitted for Pro Tour. They played like a Samwise Gamgee food combo deck with Collected Company.
Yeah, you were talking about this the other day.
Ranger Captain of Eos. Yeah. And it was like, this is so up my street. I played a league with that, and it felt really quite bad actually. The thing of like Delighted Halfling can't help you cast Ranger Captain, the mana actually felt really awkward. So I decided I wasn't going to play that, and I ended up just registering like Living End in the tournament, and which I've played like a little bit with. I don't have a ton of reps with. Definitely got on the buff end of some of the Living End variants. The very first game of the tournament, I kept like perfectly nice looking hand, had like couple of cyclers, a Force of Negation, a blue card to pitch, and a Cascade card, and like cyclers got lands. Like, what could possibly go wrong? I had one Living End in the opener. I was like, yeah, fine, no worries. I can have one dead card. Both my first and second draw step of the game were the other two copies of Living End.
I see.
And there's no fourth copy of Living End to cascade into. So at that point, your deck just does nothing. And that really set the tone for a tournament. I ended up dropping from that one, but I had some fun doing a bit of testing for Modern for it. I thought that seems interesting, at least. Not registering Living End again. I've been burnt too much. But I do think the deck is actually good.
Yeah. I guess, especially with all the new land cycles that we went over previously, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Oliphant particularly, like it kills them so quickly.
Do you have any way of casting your cyclers, or is that not, or are you just already dead by that point? If you're not like if you're not doing the busted thing, just stop. Is that kind of where you were, or?
You sometimes cast like Curator of Mysteries, which is for like the 4-mana 4/4 flyer. The rest of them you don't really cast. It did have a nice bit of tech. I have no idea if this is new tech. Any Living End players listening will probably be like, "Oh, this has been stock for 5 years," but I just hadn't noticed before. But it had one copy of Sunken Hollows, which is the blue-black filter land.
Okay.
And that lets you filter into double black, so you can cast Grief in a longer game, which is quite nice in your Teamer deck. Yeah. Thought that was cute. I thought the deck is good. I saw Nassif had a good result of it at the PT, but not it did not smile on me on Saturday. And what about you? Tell me about your what the Magic you played at Barcelona.
So the main thing I played was the Gavin Verhey mystery event. They've done these previously at Magicons, and it's basically... So for the one in Barcelona, it was Commander sealed 1-on-1. It was 3 packs of Commander Masters, 3 packs of Lord of the Rings, and then 1 mystery pack of like playtest cards that Gavin had made just for this event. So we had to build like a 60 card deck, 30 life, play up against each other. So we had to build Commander. So the most fun part about this is by far the cool playtest cards. Let me just read some to you now. So I had a conspiracy command. Command from the shadows is a conspiracy. Start the game with this conspiracy, face up in the command zone. Players each play with their commanders face down and secret until they cast them for the first time. With the reminder text, be sure to tell your opponent you're using this right at the beginning of the game so they don't reveal their commanders to you yet. So this meant that every game I played, before I said hello to my opponent, I was having to sprint around and be like, shush, don't tell me your commanders. It's a secret. I have a conspiracy.
Right.
Which was a lot of fun. Also, trying to explain that to people in different languages was also a bit tricky. We also had spell commanders as an option. So I had 2 in my pool. Lava, Axe. It's 4 and a red for a sorcery with spell commander. This card can be your commander. In limited, it can partner like other monocolored legends, and then it's just Lava Axe. Lava Axe is
that really speaks to a certain sort of Magic player, doesn't it? There's definitely Magic players who all they have ever wanted is for Lava Axe to be their commander.
So I was kind of thinking of running this one. So I had Ransack, Lab, the same thing, but it was a Ransack the Lab. I saw, I believe, a friend of ours had Rampant Growth.
Oh, that one's probably very good.
Which you could run as your commander. That one's quite spicy. I think that was it for the ones of those I had. I did have this. I didn't get to play with this card, but it seems quite dumb. I'm assuming our playgroup will be fine with me running this at some point. But it's Mathis for blockers. 4 red for a sorcery. Damage can't be prevented this turn. Creatures you control have double strike, trample, and must attack if able until end of turn. That seems...
Yeah, as for blocker, I think there's a lot of spots where I won't bother doing the maths there because it sure sounds like I'm dead. I don't know.
So I'll read you this one because I think I'm going to try this one in cube. I don't know what you think. So it's in Soul Ring, 1 on a blue for an enchantment aura. Enchant non-land permanent. Enchanted permanent is a Soul Ring.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So it's a removal spell, or it can turn something you control into a Soul Ring.
And it's just enchant permanent, right? So you can enchant your land if you need to.
No. Enchant non-land permanent.
Non-land permanent, okay. So you need to play like a 1-drop and then play this and make it into a Soul Ring. Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
I think that's still relatively powerful.
Yeah. I don't think it's bad. You need to be making like disposable stuff, I guess. But yeah, it sounds pretty good.
I'm thinking in kind of like an artifacty kind of like basically I'm thinking this is 1 blue, turn your treasure token into a Soul Ring.
Yeah, sure.
In cube, I think that could actually be quite strong.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And then the prize, like what they gave you for taking part, this is one that I think we need to workshop how we're going to build this. There's this Bass Friend Finder, 2 in a blue for a 2/3 legendary creature human wizard. You may play Bass and any other legend with 1 colored entity or less as your commanders as though they each had partner. Whenever another legendary creature you control dies, you may put it into the command zone. It replaces one of your commanders.
That is pretty spicy. What colours is it?
This is blue, sorry. This is 2 in a blue.
Okay.
So at a minimum, it can take any monocolored commander and make it add blue to the color identity. But the fun part is definitely the fact that like I was trying to think of ways of doing this, of like especially with like the ring tempts you mechanic of making creatures legendary. Like I want to make like a Grave Titan or something like that.
Ooh,
my
that's
commander.
True. You can make Thassa's Oracle into your commander.
That could be spicy. Yeah. Okay, let's go. Yeah, that's definitely one I'm going to be building at some point in the future. That one seemed cool. But yeah, in the actual tournament, I'll be honest, I was a little bit boring because I played Azusa Lost But Seeking, and Baird, Steward of Argive as my commanders.
Yeah, I mean, Azusa's very, very good.
Azusa is just like yeah. We played 3 rounds. I won the first 2 and lost the last one, and I won the first 2 because I had 5 mana on turn 3 in every game, and the one I lost was because I didn't do that, and that just got beaten down.
That checks out.
Yeah. But was a ton of fun. If you have the opportunity to go to a MagicCon, 100% do the Gavin Verhey event, like the mystery event. Like you won't it'll be similar, but it will be different every time. Like we in this event, like Marrow was playing in the event. You had like Josh Lee Kwai from the Command Zone. You had like loads of like basically these are the events that the other like kind of the other beautiful Magic celebrities want to take part in, because they are like once in a. They exist only for that weekend. Basically, they're never repeated. Like all the playtest cards he makes are never repeated. They're only there and then. So yeah, if you get the opportunity, 100% recommend it. It is like the magical highlight of the weekend by far, basically.
Nice, yeah, that sounds very cool.
Apart from Elijah Wood, obviously. That was it. I did like Elijah Wood. Right, awesome. I think that's going to bring it to the end of the episode. James, thank you so much for being here, man, and for giving us your insights today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Awesome. And just leaves me to thank you all for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow. One day I will look up what it is for podcasts. I think 5 stars. I think that's an option. Whatever the affirmative action that your podcast platform allows you to, please do that. It would highly help us out. Ooh, tell a friend. That's a good one. Please tell a friend. That would be great. But until next time, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from James, and we will see you all next time. Goodbye.